Good morning and welcome to our panel event this morning. I'm delighted to be here with my co-host, Kirsty McCollum, and to introduce to you three wonderful women to talk about mentoring. We're probably going to cover topics like the impact a mentor can have on your career, the benefits of being a mentor, and how you might go about accessing a mentor. We will also touch on the impact of moving mentoring into a virtual world and the pros and cons that have cropped up as a result of that. The first half an hour will be focusing on our speakers, and after that you will have the opportunity to ask them any questions. So if you do have any burning questions, please do pop those into the Q&A box. This will be dealt with on an anonymous basis, and Kirsty will be asking your questions of the speakers in the final half hour of the session. We will be recording the event today and it will be made available to you afterwards. You will also be asked to complete a feedback survey at the end of the webinar, and we'd be delighted to have your thoughts and feedback in relation to the event today. So without further ado, I will introduce to you our first speaker, Carolyn Keenan, from the BSEEN programme operated by Aston University. So over to you, Carolyn.
Thanks, Faye, and thanks, Kirsty, and thanks very much for inviting me to be on the panel today. Yes, so as Faye said, I'm the project manager for BSEEN, which is a student and graduate startup programme based in Birmingham. I've been involved with the project for the last 9 years, and basically we offer all the kind of startup support that you would think of for students and graduates. So we kick off with a 5-day kind of intensive boot camp. We provide a small amount of funding. We provide office space for 12 months. We provide a community of like-minded entrepreneurial people. And then obviously, particularly relevant for today is we match each of our new founders with a business mentor. So BSEEN is not sector specific, but obviously with students and graduates, as you might imagine, we do see an awful lot of tech startups that we've supported over the years and currently. And we do have, and it's good actually to say we're seeing an increasing number of women being involved in the tech startups, whether that is actually as the kind of technical lead or as more on the business, managerial side. Our mentors that we have around about sort of at any one time about 50 mentors, and they offer their support on a pro bono basis. We ask for a sort of commitment of at the very least sort of an hour a month, but sometimes we find that it's really helpful if that's sort of front loaded. So speaking a bit more regularly when the founders are just starting up. We have a whole range of different business mentors, from what you might call maybe the more traditional mentors, so perhaps people who were running their own businesses and were lucky enough to sell them and are looking to kind of give back to the community. But actually probably slightly more relevant in this kind of tech sphere is we have a lot of alumni from our program, from the last 9 years, and also people that we kind of network with and have met in and around the region, who are probably sort of 4 to 5 years ahead of our founders. And we really like those kind of mentors because for 2 reasons really. Firstly, because they're obviously very relatable. Because sometimes there is an issue with if you've got somebody who's extremely senior, they perhaps have forgotten what it's like at the start of the journey, and also maybe they don't have the sort of tech expertise and experience that's required to mentor a tech founder. So they can give really kind of practical support, practical mentoring, as well as kind of emotional and development mentoring as well. But also I think we find, and the feedback we get from some of those mentors, is that they gain an awful lot from it as well. So they sometimes they're so involved in the day-to-day running of their business that they don't get the chance to kind of put their head up above the above the water, and to really reflect on how far they've come on their journey over that period. So it's actually really good for them to for their own self-development, to think, yeah, actually I've really learned a lot along the way, and I've got a lot to give back. So I think it's really important that when you're looking for a mentor yourself, you don't necessarily always, it is more traditional to think you need somebody extremely senior. And yes, there is a lot of benefit in somebody who's got a very good network and can connect you to that network, open doors for you and facilitate those connections. But equally, it's really good, I think, if your mentor is really relatable to you and has a deep understanding of what you're going through at the current or at the different stages of your journey, when you're starting up and when you're scaling the business. Because obviously, and sometimes you need to think about, you may need to get new mentors on board at different stages of your journey. So an early stage mentor will, might be a huge support, but they may actually kind of almost outlive their purpose, and you may need then to seek new mentors that have the experience in scaling up and can guide you through that process. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we call our mentor manifesto, because I think the other thing when you're seeking a mentor is to, I'm not necessarily saying they need training as such, but I think it's worth checking in with them that you and they are on the same wavelength. It's really important at the beginning to have that sort of open and frank conversation about what you're looking for and what they can provide. Personally, I think that a mentor relationship should be a two-way street. I don't think it's necessarily helpful just to expect to be a passive participant in the mentoring relationship. I think the more active you can be, the more you kind of direct your mentor, the better, the more benefit that you'll have from that relationship in the long run. So in terms of, so we don't offer formal training to our mentors, but we do sit down and have sort of very frank conversations with them before we match them up with any of our mentees. And some of the things that we have, our mentor manifesto is available on our BSEEN website. But it's things like, we want our mentors to be able to devote the time, particularly at the beginning of the relationship, because it's very important that you develop, the mentor and the mentee develop trust in order to get the most sustainable relationship that you can. We want them to be responsive and to be as flexible as possible in terms of how the mentoring relationship actually takes place. So obviously during the pandemic, pretty much everything in life moved online, and there are some benefits of that, and then also there's some downsides of that. So I think you can have a perfectly good mentoring relationship online, but I do also think that sometimes there's a place for meeting face to face, and sometimes it's better if you can have initial conversations face to face and then maybe look to continue it via Zoom or Teams or whatever platform that you choose. So I would suggest have a think about that. We definitely want our mentors to be active listeners and totally present in the meeting. Sometimes they are busy people, but if they can really park everything else that's happening in their lives just for the duration of the hour-long meeting and really listen to the concerns of their mentee, I think that's really important. We definitely want them to provide unbiased guidance. We're not really interested in people who are looking to take any kind of share in the business. It really is a pro bono relationship that we're looking for, and to provide constructive feedback. I think that's really, really important. Don't shy away from providing that constructive feedback, but obviously don't, completely tear down the individual in those meetings. And most importantly, probably, is to support the mentees to make their own decisions. Asking open questions, being empathetic to the challenges faced by, in our case, early stage students and graduate entrepreneurs, and that's where perhaps some being relatable really comes into play. Help, I think it's really important perhaps as a mentor to help the mentee articulate their concerns and ideas. Don't necessarily always expect them to be able to do that right from the start. Some can, but others need a bit of guidance and help to be able to articulate their challenges. I think actually getting something from the meetings, obviously having a chat and being supportive is all very good, and it's an important part of being a mentor. But I also think it's important to make sure that there is some action, or maybe not making sure, but trying to encourage your mentee to actually have some action from the meeting. So encourage things like goal setting, and then check in the next meeting how far they've got on that goal setting. You don't want to make them feel so uncomfortable that they won't meet with you if they haven't. I have heard from some of our founders that they are avoiding meeting with their mentors because they haven't done anything that was discussed in the meeting. So you don't want to be, too draconian about it, but actually, from a mentor's perspective, they're giving up their time, and it would be good if their actual mentee was, acting. Not necessarily, because another important thing is, from a mentee's perspective, is not to take as absolute gospel everything that your mentor says. And it's good to have discussion, and you don't necessarily have to be in agreement all the time with what your mentor tells you. Have some debate around it, put forward your thoughts, but don't. A mentoring relationship should be more than just a kind of chatting shop. There should be some, if you want to get the most from it and you want to get impact. And yeah, I think I mentioned as well about being open to opening up the network, facilitating connections, and being a signpost to alternative support that's available. Make it a good mentor, I think, particularly in the tech sphere, should be aware of kind of what's going on in the tech scene and what would be useful for their mentee to know about. And then just finally from me, I thought from a mentee's perspective, from my experience of working with early stage founders, some of the things to do, and actually a lot of it obviously is reverse of what I've just said about the mentee, but it's be an active mentee. Don't just sit there and expect to absorb everything from your mentor. They're not a manager. They're not there to direct you. They're not there to tell you what to do. So make sure that you're thinking ahead of the meeting about what you're going to get from that meeting, how you're going to get maximum impact from your mentor. I think that's really important. View the if you can get into the habit of viewing it as a two-way process, almost like sort of co-mentor, co-mentoring relationship, so that you're getting a lot from it as a mentee, but actually you're also giving a lot to your mentor. That's the feedback we get from our mentors, that they learn so much from their mentees, because they get perhaps a fresh outlook on their own businesses or their own life if they're no longer running their own business. And yeah, just make sure you're using your mentee as an impartial sounding board. Anything that's concerning you at all, using your mentor, anything that concerns you at all, raise it, because they won't necessarily have all the answers, but they might have a perspective on it. And actually sometimes just articulating your concerns and sharing them with somebody actually really helps you, and then you can then sort of go on the process of working the way through sort of different ways of solving the problems that you might have together. So I think that was all I was going to say. I've obviously seen it from managing the mentoring part of our project. I've also been a mentor myself. Last year for the UN, I'm about to be a mentor for Women Tech. I've been a mentor for the Prince's Trust, and personally I get a huge amount from it, and I really like it when a mentee is engaged. It's so much more satisfying, and you really feel like you can actually, most mentors come at it from the perspective of wanting to help somebody who's starting out on their journey, or who's looking to scale, if that's the case. So I think it's a wasted opportunity if you don't sort of go in prepared and try to get as much as you possibly can out out of the relationship.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. That's really, really interesting. And there's lots and lots of different hints and tips in there. So that is really, really valuable insight. So thank you ever so much for that. Just a reminder to the audience that the Q&A box is open. So if you have any questions, please do pop those into the box and we will complete those. We'll ask those questions at the end. And I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, who is Victoria from the. So Victoria is the head of training and strategy at Scale and Connect, and I should also plug that she is a finalist for the Midlands Women in Tech Awards this evening. So we'll all be wishing her luck with that. Victoria, would you like to let us have your thoughts?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me here. I have a bit of a cold, so bear with me if I have to drink some hot drink or anything, but hopefully I'll be able to speak properly today. So hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. There's a big quorum, so I'm really happy about that. And I can only imagine that everyone that's here is either a mentor, having mentor, or is interested to see how they can build mentorship relationships and how they can help them. So I'm really excited to see the questions at the end and listen to all of the speakers. It's going to be I'm really excited. So just a little bit about me. I do different projects, but the one that I'm going to be talking to you about today is called Scale and Connect. And I wanted to talk a little bit because Scale and Connect is an international program. It's based in the West Midlands, but we have a network of mentors all over the world. And our goal is to create a positive impact around the world by being able to connect initiatives that deal with entrepreneurs with a global network of certified mentors that are using a methodology recognized by the United Nations. So that's a bit of what I do, or what I would like to talk to you about. And something that happened is that this initiative actually grew, part of it because of us going online. But before I tell you about that, I want to mention a little bit about my experience. So I'm an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur since I got to the UK. You can hear that I'm not from here. So I'm actually originally from Venezuela. And where I come from, the culture of having mentors wasn't a thing. And I know the first time I encountered this was actually during the BSEEN program that Carolyn runs many, many years ago. And the first thing was like, oh, you get a mentor. I was like, oh, what's that? And I really didn't understand exactly how it worked, but it helped so much. And since then, I have actively found people to try to help me, people that I can learn from. And it could be one or two mentors at the same time, people that are in different positions to where I can learn either how to be more assertive. So I try to identify things I know I'm missing, for example, assertiveness, and I will find someone that's more assertive and then have them as my mentor in different things and bounce ideas back. I have a great mentor as well in the UN who has helped me a lot. And these are people that I've found along the way that in really good positions. They're very knowledgeable, they're very kind, and they're happy to help. And you just connect and they're there to support you. Not to tell you what to do, but to support you. And so that has been incredibly valuable for me. And from there, I started to get involved in, well, if I'm doing this for me, how can I do that for other people as well? I started to get involved in Silicon Canal as a Women in Tech mentor. Now I'm part of the leadership committee, if you guys know Silicon Canal. And what happened at the end is that I started to work, as I was doing my work with the UN, with the ITU, I started to try to train mentors to help our entrepreneurs. So we do a lot of entrepreneurial work. I help tech entrepreneurs. And then I started to help support the mentorship side. And what happened after that is that another organization contacted me to help them build a global initiative from a spin-off. And this spin-off is what Scale and Connect grew to be. One thing that is incredible about this spin-off is that we had all these people around the world. And then obviously we used to do mentorship. You meet them in person and you help them. So you would have a pitch mentor that would sit down with you and help you with your pitch. But now we went online, and what happens? And this incredibly opportunity opened that now we have mentors from Poland supporting people in Korea, startups in Korea, and they bring their knowledge and so like the international part and a very different perspective. And what has come from this going virtual is actually, just as an example, today we have Women in Tech, and Scale and Connect is giving the winners, so the Women in Tech winners are going to be receiving a mentorship package. And these mentors come from the UK, they come from Poland, they come from Germany, they come from many different countries. And I think that is incredibly valuable because we have been able to tap into more knowledge, more experiences and international experiences that is going to help, but that has been helping and hopefully continue to help startups that they might be here, they will need the help in their local community, but also start to getting them thinking about thinking global and getting out there and having that mentorship. So actually that has opened going online, even though it has been, there's the downside, and I think Carolyn said it very well. We're missing out on the sitting down, that moment where you sit down and you bring that serendipity, where you're having that conversation and you're talking to someone and more ideas may come. But actually we were able to move it online, and even though we might be missing on that warmth, we have been trying to do our best to try to get that connection, because that relationship, that connection of is not I'm not going to say it's friendship. However, I have had the pleasure of becoming friends with my mentors. It's this very close relation that you create with someone that it's a person that is there to help you and they have your best interest. So like Carolyn is saying, it's not because they're going to have a share, it's because they're there because they believe in what you as an entrepreneur are able to explain what you want to do, and they believe in what you're doing and they want to help you succeed. They believe in your vision and they're there to help you by not coaching, because that's slightly different, but to giving you opinions, support, being a sounding board, giving you just support, being a sounding board, being there for you when you need, and helping you with their knowledge. Connections are also very important. So something that has happened with going online as well is that if someone, for example, needs support in or they're looking for VCs or whatnot, now they can tap into a more international network of VCs or angel investors or whatever it is. So it has actually been able to expand that, like how much knowledge we can access and how many people from other people from around the world, which I think it's amazing. But I do agree with Carolyn, but we do need, it is missing the little part of that face to face. But it's so important, and what we keep hearing from our mentors as well. So our mentees, of course, you see the value is obvious, right? So you as a mentee, you get someone that has more experience in whatever subject it is, and they're there to support you. But on the other side of the spectrum, you have the mentors, and what I keep hearing, and my team keeps hearing over and over again, is how gratifying it's and fulfilling is to help someone else and give back. We keep hearing this giving, they want to give. So we always ask our mentors. So we actually provide training and we certify them, and then they join our community. And what we keep hearing back is that they basically want to give back. So they've already done so much and they want to give back. They want to help support. And that's incredibly valuable, because then you have this person that is just there because they feel good about helping others. And our mentors are also pro bono, which again, it's mind blowing that these people just want to go there and help without any pay. And on the other hand of the spectrum, they also learn a lot. So for example, we have some of our mentors are older, and they might not be as in touch with the tech, so they might not be helping with the tech, but they'll help with, okay, I can help you understand how to negotiate, maybe what's like the part of the human skills, so the emotional intelligence. But then on the other side, they would learn the new trends. So almost like reverse mentoring. And this is, I think, what Carolyn was saying, that I completely agree. This like two-side is a two-side. So for a mentor, not only they have the benefit of feeling this feeling of giving back, but also they learn a lot from the mentee. And I think those are some of the best relationships as well. Sometimes the mentor and mentoring relationship, they don't work because they don't hit it off, they don't connect well, but that's okay. So if anyone here have ever had that experience where they tried to with a mentor and it didn't work out, it happens. There's a lot of people out there that want to help formally or informally through a program or not. But it's very important that, and from my experience, it has always been very important to have people around me that are way better than me at different things that I can go to. And basically they ask them to mentor me and to help me and build this mentor relationship, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go around, because I've done this. I remember going to a networking event and I saw one of the speakers. I'm like, I love this guy. I want him to be my mentor. Went to him. Excuse me, sir, would you like to be my mentor? I'm not saying that you're supposed to be doing that. However, that worked out really well, surprisingly. Actually, the first time he said, no, I don't mentor people. And then I emailed him thanking him and he's like, no, it's okay, I can mentor you. It's fine. I was like, okay. So sometimes don't take that no. And that worked out really well. But the other times have been just that it's someone that at work, for example, with my UN work, someone at work that he started to be my supervisor. And then we just build this relationship where he always tries to help me improve and then be better. And it's super, super important. The other thing that we focus on in Scale and Connect, besides, so from our training, because you can have all the technical training and then how to do the relationship, and then we have the mentor agreements, and so I guess similar to the manifesto, is that we always look for mentors that have high emotional intelligence, because you don't want to be in a situation, and that's difficult. And I think the virtual world limits that a little bit, because it's more difficult to assess this when you're trying to find mentors online because you don't have them face to face. But something that is super important is that the mentor has to be able to give advice in a way that is not destroying the other person. Because they might have the best interest, but they might not be able to communicate them in the best way. So that's something that is also very, very important when looking for a mentor and when becoming a mentor. Make sure that you're working on your emotional intelligence and your emotional skills. So I think like in terms of my story, that's about it. And I encourage everyone here to always have someone that you consider a mentor, one or two. It makes a difference. They help you with connections. They help you with knowledge. It's incredible. And yeah, that's what we do. Why I'm so passionate about Scale and Connect, because we're trying to bring this to those entrepreneurs that might need that guidance, that will need that guidance, and be able to bring people from all over the world to help them. So that's it. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Victoria. That's absolutely interesting, fascinating, and you're doing incredible things. So the mentoring has worked out for you, which I am glad to see. So thank you also for introducing the concept of less formal mentoring, because you and Carolyn run formal mentoring programs, which are hugely beneficial, but we can't ignore the importance of having informal mentors in our careers. And with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Winna, who is our final speaker. Winna, you are a manager of multiple engineers, and you've both been mentored and have had, excuse me, you've both been mentored and mentored others, and I'd be delighted to hear about your experiences.
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks for having me here today. Mostly I'm just going to tell you a bit about my experience. It's very exciting, the programs that we've already heard about, and in many ways I wish I had been able to supplement what I found in my career so far with some of the programs that have been spoken about. But I think, as mentioned, my path for mentorship was much more organic. I decided now a few years ago to switch direction in my life from graphic design and a lot of print-based work into tech. I wanted to do software engineering and hadn't really had the opportunity to immerse myself in it until boot camps started to emerge as a thing, really, because when I was in university, it was still very cerebral and intellectual, and I just felt like I couldn't access it. The learning wasn't in the format that I needed. So at some point I decided, you know what, let's go all in. Let's do a boot camp. Let's see how it goes. Worst that happens is that I end up going back to design. So I did a 12-week boot camp, and it was tiring, exhausting. and I definitely questioned my decision a lot. I pushed myself every day to learn and just practice and practice and practice, because a lot of times when you're sharpening those skills, that's what it requires. And one of the biggest benefits of the particular program that I did was that they would have lunch and learns with folks in the industry. And every Wednesday, we would meet somebody around London who was doing things in tech and wanted to share, whether it's their company's story or what they were working on or their guidance. And one of the speakers on a particular Wednesday, when I felt like there was no way I was going to make it in this new world, spoke about a company called Pivotal. And that company was described as a place where businesses came in to learn practices of software craftsmanship and really just teaching engineering skills at that base level. And I perked up. I was intrigued, and I, to Victoria's point, I went up after the lunch and learn and felt very bold and very tired at the same time and said, JB, hi, that was very interesting to me. I would like to learn more. I know I don't know much right now, but could I have your business card to be in touch? And he very clearly raised his eyebrow at me and said, I would be delighted. So he handed over his business card and I kept it tucked away. And the program progressed. I finished, I presented my work, and I still felt quite unsure of myself. But one of the first things I did was write an email to JB just to say, once again, thank you for coming to speak to us. And I'm now striking out in this new world and would love to keep in touch. And he said that would be great. And he also hosted in his office, because it was a new London office, he hosted an evening tech workshop. And I think the biggest thing that I found in my career from that point on was some of it's about luck, some of it's about privilege, and a lot of it, I think, is also when you have luck and when you have privilege, what are you going to do with it? So what opportunities are you going to say yes to? And also what opportunities are you going to let other people know about that they may not have access to? So that tech event happened and I went to it. And it honestly, I think, was a turning point for me. I was introduced to test-driven design and pair programming. I was able to do pair programming in the workshop, which was very conceptual at that point and felt very foreign to me. But I sat with somebody, an engineer at that point, for 2 hours, and I learned more than I did in a week in the boot camp. And I knew then that was my goal, was to get in an environment where I could do pair programming and where I could learn more about craftsmanship. I wasn't ready for Pivotal at that point. So I went around, I had loads of interviews, and I got some offers, and I decided the first role I took would, much like my pattern, throw me into the deep end. And I went from one language to another language, and from looking mostly at something with a framework to full stack work in a language that I didn't understand at all. And I worked at that job for a year. And it was very, very informative. I learned an incredible amount about technology, but also about my own resilience. I was challenged. It was a small group of people that did not look like me, didn't have my experience, and knew a lot of technical things that I didn't know. I would say that the structure in that first job didn't lend itself to me safely asking for guidance and safely asking for mentorship. I had to find it elsewhere. And when that started happening, I started writing my thoughts down to Nick, who was the person I met at the pair programming evening, and asked him as well, like, Nick, could I keep in touch with you? And he was very excited to keep in touch with me. So when I was feeling especially adrift, I guess, I wrote him a couple of messages just saying, this is what happened. This is what's happening. I just love some resources. I'm trying to learn. I'm struggling a bit. And he first thing he did was reassure me and say, you're in a tough situation. Please don't let that color your impression of the overall industry, which was invaluable for me to hear at that point. We met up for coffee a few times throughout that year. And he told me some important things like there are loads of really energizing events happening in London, and you should go to all of them. And I did. I threw myself into it. I networked, I went to events, I met people. I built up a network of people that I felt like could help me in one thing or another, whether it was testing or a certain aspect of the code. And after a year, the founder and I decided that the relationship was not working at that role, and it was probably the best thing that could have happened. But I was ready to step back and figure out what was next. So this was, I think, my most intensive networking in my career, which is why I'm talking about it for a little bit longer. But essentially what I did at that point was decide to make a mock project and to reach out to everyone that I had met that I felt like could teach me something. And I had a rota of people that I would have breakfast, lunch, or dinner with and sit with my computer and get them to teach me code. And I baked a lot of cookies because what I did at the end of those sessions was give them a box of cookies that in general they felt very grateful for and were happy to continue chatting with me. I keep in touch with some of those folks still, and they taught me an immeasurable amount about technology, but again, also about, hey, this is my experience. It will get better. Keep your spirits up, keep going. So then again, I was applying, I was looking for roles that fit me better in terms of the support I needed. And I found a role at an agency, which was wonderful. I felt for the first time like I could breathe at my job. I wasn't working 14 or 16-hour days, and I was still learning. Imagine that. Pairing was happening, and my skills were growing, but I didn't have to lose myself to be able to make that happen. But I kept in touch with Nick and I kept in touch with JB, and about 9 months into that, because Nick had kept an eye on my progress in my pairing project and had kept an eye on me as I changed roles, and they invited me to apply. And again, I felt like a complete fish out of water. What am I doing? Imposter syndrome. There's no way. I went in for the interview. They offered it to me on the spot and I started. And again, I was like, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to teach? So I was hired to work with clients who would come into our office and learn the practices that I was learning. So I was teaching them test driven. I was teaching them the practices of pairing and lean teams. I was terrified. But again, I set it up an environment that really nurtured my ability, calmed me. And Nick, by sheer luck, ended up being my first manager, which was incredibly useful as a sounding board and to help me and guide me. I was in that engineering role for 2 years before I decided to go work on internal projects and work with a bunch of really smart engineers who had the practices down pat, so I could learn more about backend technology, server technology, from people who are very smart and did the things that I wanted to learn more of. As soon as I got there, I got pregnant. I was like, oh my God, how am I ever going to learn while also being pregnant? This is impossible. Within 6 months, I was invited by the head of that department to apply as an engineering manager. I was 8 months pregnant. I was like, Chris, how does this doesn't quite make sense in my brain. And he looked at me and he said, Winna, if you felt like you couldn't apply to be an engineering manager because you were 8 months pregnant, I would be disappointed in our team. And at that point, I was like, oh my God. So I applied. And the day that I went into labor, he wrote me a message saying I got the role, which was wonderful because he had sort of coached me and mentored me up to applying. And then I came back from maternity. I started a new role as a new mom. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do it. But again, looking for relationships, looking for people, either other managers who have more experience within the org, or going back to Nick, asking him, hey, I left your part of the org, but could you talk to me? Could you help me? Could you sanity check? Fast forward to another child coming back to the same company, but actually had been acquired while I was on leave. I went from a 2,000 person company, starting at a 5-person company, growing to a 100-person company, joining a 2,000 person company, being acquired by a 30,000 person company. And overnight, my role went from a UK-based role to having line management, all in the West Coast of the US. So I was a mother with very small children who had to jump on calls at 7 p.m. And I loved that my leadership chain, when I looked up, I was like, oh, women. Wow, that's incredible. Look at these people who can manage me and teach me and support me. But I couldn't do it. I loved the role. I explained very clearly why I needed to look elsewhere. And they said, I can't change time zones, but I wish we could keep you. And I started looking around. Again, I interviewed, I applied, I spoke to the people that I respected in the industry, and I wound up finding a company, which is where I am now, Cazoo, where their leadership team was incredibly impressive. And their interview process gave me a lot of confidence in their sort of approach to management and leadership and my potential for growth. So I went in applying for their engineering manager position. I think I had learned enough about management at that point and the way I wanted to be a manager and the focus I wanted to put on things like coaching and growing people so that I could make managers and my senior engineers could make engineers, that they really wanted me to come on board, to the point that I ended up speaking to 15 people, including the CTO, before I was willing to accept, to make sure I was going to an environment that would support me. And I still wasn't sure because I was walking away from a big company with a lot of money. And they ended up creating a senior engineering manager off the back of my interviews so that they could offer me that growth opportunity. So what I would say across the board is definitely meet people and try to find people as quickly as possible that you think can support you, that you can trust, that you feel safe with. Go to networking as much as possible and keep your eye out, to Victoria's point. Try to build your community so that when you are in dark times, which I was at every role change in my career, you have somebody to keep you grounded. And what I did off the back of that at every turn was some level of mentorship. So when I was an engineering manager, I ended up working directly with reports or other engineers on their goals. As a senior engineering manager, I'm working on folks who have just come out of boot camp and don't quite know the industry, but also folks who are looking at people leadership and don't quite know. So I think there is a lot of there's a cyclical nature to learning and growing in the tech industry. And I would really recommend anybody who's looking for feedback and looking for that support to be a little bit bold and take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. I think that's about it.
Thank you so much, Winna. Really appreciate that. And it's fantastic to hear about your experiences with the informal mentoring programs as well. So that's really interesting. I just want to hand over to Kirsty now, because we've had a few questions that have come in. I'm slightly conscious that we've overrun a little bit with the speakers, but it was so interesting. I took the decision to let that happen. So we've got just over 15 minutes left for questions and answers. So over to you, Kirsty.
Thanks so much, Faye, and thank you so much, Victoria, Winna and Carolyn. It's been absolutely fabulous to hear your insights. Thank you as well to everybody who sent in questions into the Q&A box. Please do continue to send those in, and if we have time, I will certainly ask them. The first question, I think, Carolyn, would be maybe a great one for you. It's my daughter wants to study computer science with electronics at university, which we know is a very male-dominated sector. How might she be able to secure a mentor in this environment?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. And I would say, certainly from my experience here at Aston, is that I think most universities are really trying to encourage more women into the STEM and engineering and computer science type degrees. So we have different sorts of mentoring programs. So it might be peer mentoring, so we might buddy somebody coming into the first year with a student on a similar course further up in their degree. But we also use our alumni as well, so we look to get not necessarily mentoring in a formal sense, but maybe to come in and do a bit of sort of inspirational speaking and just be there as an additional support. But it's a good question, and I think it's one that it would be good to raise at open days if you're going around to look at all the different universities, to ask that question and see what different kind of schemes the university that your daughter's interested in may have in place. And obviously if they haven't, then that perhaps tells you something about whether that university is the right one.
Thank you, Carolyn. That's great. Winna and Victoria, I wonder if you have any other thoughts on that, or maybe more widely, what do you think could be changed in what would be the one thing that you would change in the education system to encourage more women into tech?
Yeah, so definitely I think there's an element of, the word is not overwhelm. It looks a bit daunting. I think sometimes, especially because there's not much representation of women in tech, that we tend to think like, oh, it's just for men, and it seems that some girls from a very young age lose interest because they just don't seem to see themselves represented. So having women in tech, representation of women in tech is very important. I think that would be something that I would definitely not necessarily change, but add to, just remove that scary part of tech and make it more accessible. I think sometimes we make engineering and technology not as accessible, and just making it more accessible for girls to go and say, yes, it's what I want to do. And I think one of the things is just not talking about necessarily just like tech as a technology, but like what can you do with the technology? Because I think that's far more important. Because I think that when you know that as an engineer or someone that builds software, that basically you become, you get all these tools to build and create whatever you want. Because it's not just one thing, it's anything you want, you can do it with that knowledge. And just giving them that, I think that's very important. And also bringing more women into schools to show how they are working in tech. So they see examples. I think seeing examples, because you see a lot of like Elon Musk and the guy from Amazon, Jeff Bezos. But then so you have all these like men that boys can think like, I want to achieve this, but like, where are the women? So I think that's very important, and that we also give those women that position. We often do not. Every time I do a workshop, you talk about, oh, who do you think it's a great example of an entrepreneur? And it's always male examples when there's so many female examples out there. So I think that's one of the things that I would bring into schools, use those examples, those women, to encourage other girls to become technologists.
Yeah, I think increasing like visibility and representation is so important. Winna and Carolyn, do you have any other insights on that?
I think what I had wished for at a younger age was a lot of what Victoria said, because it did feel inaccessible to me, and also felt like I had to figure out how to earn a living pretty quickly. And that just felt like, oh, that's a thing that I don't even know what that looks like in a professional sense. So I think from a young age, making it appeal a bit more, feel a bit more practical, feel like it can wind up being a career to imagine. But also I've worked some in lower schools, and really just starting to gamify it with colors that are universally appealing and not overly masculine, and challenges that little girls by and large think about, rather than just ones that little boys by and large think about. So how to get that representation pretty much from upper school on down.
I would only really add maybe that obviously from Winna's talk, it seems that maybe people sort of lower down in the industry are just working incredibly hard. So maybe there needs to be something to encourage, some time in the working day for people to go out and do some of these activities. seems like that would be a good thing to do.
Thank you all for those insights. That's great. I think this next question is one that we could talk about for ages. And I'll leave it open to the three of you because I'm sure you'll all have insights on this, but it's, how do we tackle the inevitable imposter syndrome in women who would like to mentor but are unsure of their credentials?
Okay. If I can, Carolyn, you want to start?
No, you.
I start.
You go.
Actually, so imposter syndrome is such an interesting thing, and it's not only women that get it; men also get it. The thing is that we have different challenges in the tech industry, so it might be that for us some things are more challenging than for men, but I know plenty of men that get it. I find it very interesting. I get it. I get it all the time. And having a mentor actually helps you get out of it. I recently had a conversation because I was looking for opportunities, for the opportunities, and I was trying to see, just to assess, like, where do I see myself, in which role do I see myself? And from my experience, I would be a senior manager. It's like, that's not possible. Who am I managing? It's insane, right? Like, this thing that happens in your head is like, who am I managing? And then ultimately, like, my mentor was like, wait 1 second, don't you lead different teams all over the world? Like, yes. Don't you create projects from scratch in different countries? Yes. Don't you work in the UN? Yes. So what do you think you are? And then he ended up introducing me to someone else in a multinational, and same thing, just for the purpose of like, where do you see her? And he's like, oh, you're a senior manager. I was like, what? So it's this imposter syndrome, this running imposter syndrome. And I think it's really hard because when you are into it, it's hard to get out of it. And the way that you get out of it, for me at least, is to get someone else. Either you become factual, you have to be very factual and remember, this is what I do, this is what I've done, and then you back yourself up, or have someone or other people that remind you, that give you more objective perspective, like, wait 1 second, let's put the facts, let's remove the emotion, let's get the facts. Because I remember, like, I've done presentations of like women in tech and like this one, and I remember, like, I've had women, I remember one very in particular that came to me and she was crying and saying, oh my God, I wish I had the confidence that you have. And I was thinking, and I was like, no, it's just, you have to do, like, I have massive imposter syndrome, but I just have to get out there and do it. So I think, and that completely broke my heart, because there's so many people that have it. Like I'm sure I see a lot of you guys doing like this, like, we get it. And it's such a bad trap to fall into. And I think a mentor definitely helps you, or a trusting person helps you get out of it. That would be mine.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But I also think maybe sometimes there's something around starting. It is all about getting out of your comfort zone, isn't it? And it's about, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. But maybe starting off at a sort of low level. So maybe going into primary schools to start with, and then working your way up to perhaps secondary or university. But it is a really common thing, and maybe it is something that should be talked about a bit more, because actually if you hear that some of the really senior women that you really admire and respect suffered or still suffer from it, then it makes you feel that you're not alone, and that maybe it'll help you to take some steps to overcome it.
Thanks, those are great insights. Winna, feel free to add on to that as well, but I wanted to ask you specifically the next question, because you talked quite extensively about how you took those opportunities at networking events to go up and to speak to people and to make connections to find mentors. And the question is, I'm a new graduate, I'm from a non-tech background. How can I make connections in the tech sphere and approach finding a mentor, particularly in a virtual world?
It's a good question. I think it depends on what kind of role you're looking at. So if you're looking at going into engineering, or if you're looking at going into entrepreneurship, I would say the approach would be different. But from an engineering perspective, I don't feel like I've seen a decrease in the number of events that are happening, and you have opportunities outside of where you live to connect with people. So to Victoria's point, but also if I'm in London, normally I wouldn't be on a panel that's not happening in London. So this is a very lucky time to have more exposure, actually. I think to the point that Carolyn made before, in my experience, I never went into a mentorship empty-handed. I had a problem, I had a thing I wanted help with, I had a thing I needed to think through. And for folks starting out, that's such a signal to a mentor, I think, that my time's going to be valuable, most valuable, because this person is coming to me for a thing that specifically for a thing that I can offer. So if it is engineering and you haven't done engineering before, just start somewhere, write some code, think of some questions, and then find somebody. Listen to events where it's more focused on getting into the industry rather than anything else. And if you zero in on that kind of focus, I think you'll end up seeing a lot more events than perhaps you think, and you can just start connecting from there. And then, yeah, I didn't think I realized until this talk how much the step up closest, the role closest to your next role is important. But that's kind of naturally what I did when I first started out. It was all about finding those engineering mentors and then kind of going from there. So do a bit of pre-work, make sure you have the right questions to ask, even if it feels scary, and then look out for those events where people are there to help you get over that hump.
Brilliant, thank you. And Victoria, you look like you have something to add as well.
I absolutely love what Winna said. Like, for sure, like the whole, like, you have to go with the problem. And I think something that sometimes people do, especially if you're a startup, is that sometimes we struggle to say what we're struggling with. And I think it's so important to just be open about it. Like back to, because when I have gone into like, oh, this is what I do, blah, 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 you know, that you put up like that's confident persona, you don't get half of the support of like, okay, so I'm doing this, but actually I'm struggling here. Is there any way that you can help me with this? And that's such a different experience, because then people are like, yeah, of course, blah, 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 connect you, whatever it is. So like, make sure like that vulnerability, it goes a long way.
And I think just to tack onto that as a potential mentor, I've had people where I work put time in my calendar, and I've said pretty clearly, unless there's an agenda there, people have said, oh, I'm interested in like the people track and leadership, and I just want to know some things. Like, I love it, but I really don't have enough time spare to wander through it with you. So can you ahead of time, can you think of that agenda? Can you think of what's top of mind? Or just think about the questions you're really curious about. Again, I think I want to use the time to the best of both of our advantages.
Brilliant. Carolyn, do you have any final thoughts on that?
Not really. I think it's really, really good advice, and obviously Winna's more in the industry, so I think is really well placed to give that advice, and obviously equally Victoria.
Fabulous, thank you so much. Well, I'm aware that we're running quite close to the end of the event at 11 o'clock. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to you, Victoria, Carolyn and Winna, for being part of our panel. I think I can speak on behalf of everybody, and I've seen some messages coming in saying it's been really fabulous to have your insights. We're really grateful for you appearing with us today. Thanks to Faye as well for hosting, and also to Code Nation, who we worked with jointly on this event. Just for all of the attendees, thank you all so much for coming. We will be sending around a recording of this webinar if your email address was registered, so do look out for that, and also keep an eye out in that email for follow-up events and other things that you can keep up to date with to get involved. But Faye, unless there's any last words that you would like to say. Okay, thank you so much everybody for joining this webinar on inspiring women, technology and mentoring. It's been fabulous to have you.